Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends is a show that absolutely thrives on its visuals. It's a production where the presentation is equally as important as the storytelling, and every single aspect of it has been carefully handicrafted to bring the island of Sodo and its inhabitants to life. While the modelling aspect of the production is of course extremely vital to the show's presentation, the camera work also deserves a lot of praise for the ways it portrays the models throughout each series. Regardless of how good the models were, if the camera work was poor or overly simplistic, then the illusion of this being a living, breathing world would simply not work, and it would come across as so incredibly obvious that these are just little models being filmed on a set. It's through the lens of a camera that we as the viewers get to experience Sodo, and it's thanks to that lens that these models are transformed into something more. This is how Henry's model normally looks, if you were to just look at it normally. Though it's well made, it's painfully obvious that this is just a model prop you could pick up, push around, and do whatever you want with it. Now this is how that same model looks when filmed from this specific angle, and the difference is stark. Though you can still of course tell this is just a model, the way it's presented to us makes it seem like the big, strong, mechanical machine that it's emulating. Whether it's a static shot from a high or low angle to give a sense of scale, a panning shot to showcase the environment, or even a first-person view to put us right in the action, the camera plays a big role in making Thomas and Friends look the way it does. These episodes are only about 4.5 minutes long each, which means that every shot counts. With the limited runtime of these stories, it was important to make sure that whatever we saw on screen looked as good as possible, and I believe they succeeded in this. So I decided to go through each episode of the classic era, which I considered to be series 1 to 5, paying close attention to the camera work, and then picking my favourite shot in each of them. Some of these shots I picked because I thought the camera angle was interesting, others I picked just because I thought the colours looked good, or I liked what was happening on the screen. Some are just because I found it amusing or strange. Please let me know what your own picks are in the comments below. Without further ado, let's get rolling, starting with Series 1. The first episode is already quite difficult to pick, because there's 3 that stand out to me. Of course, the very first shot of the series is iconic, and the final one of Thomas travelling alone across the bridge with the sunset looks really nice. However, for my pick, I do have to go with the shot of Thomas travelling through Knapford though. The model work in the background may look simplistic now, especially compared to the sort of stuff we'd see later, but when I was a child it seemed as if this town in the background stretched for miles and miles, and it made Sodo seem like such a real place. Again, looking at it right now, it is simplistic, but back then, it seemed so much bigger. Edward travelling down the line at sunset looks really pretty. This series has some very nice skyboxes, particularly season 1. They went in so hard on making these sets look as illustrative as possible. It almost seems like they weren't going for true realism in places. They wanted to make it look like these pages had been brought to life. It's got to be the very first shot of the episode. That low angle shot of Henry from down there really makes him appear as the big machine he is. And it's the only part of the episode that actually looks like it's raining. I have no idea how they made that watery effect there, but it works. The shot of Henry and Gordon alongside each other, with the human characters sandwiched between them, adds a good sense of scale. Look how tiny the Fat Controller looks there, sandwiched between Gordon and Henry. I realise now that that's a bit of a strange sentence to say. The shot with the 3 guys standing there like that, with 2 of them looking off into the distance, while the one in the middle gestures towards the camera. Something about it just makes me think of something you'd see on like a rap album or something. I love it. Edward reversing into the shed at night looks so good. The way it's framed with the characters on the left and the moon in the sky in the top right, with all the empty space taking up the rest of the shot, just seems really well done. You can almost feel how quiet it is. Edward being almost in perfect shadow until he gets to the shed is a nice touch too. James lying in the field with a crane attached to him, ready to be lifted out, is a great example of how well-skilled model work can portray a scene without any movement in it. It's essentially a freeze frame, an event that features all the key elements, such as James on his trucks lying tipped over in all different directions, the workmen tending to him, the torn up soil beneath him, and of course the chains of the breakdown train, wrapped around the trucks to pick them up. It is literally a snapshot, an illustration brought to life. Everything you need to know is contained within this one still image, and there's no movement. Special mention goes to this shot of James thundering past, while Thomas just stands there looking on in pure terror with a real "what the fuck" look on his face. This shot of James at the station with the people coming to see him is nice. It sounds weird, but I actually like seeing shots where you can't see the engine's faces, because it reminds you that they're just machines. In a way, it does dehumanise them. If you just saw James from this angle, you wouldn't think he's any different from a normal engine. These are just trains doing their work. James victoriously reaching the top of the hill, pulling what I think is the longest train of the season, you can look into that, but I might be wrong. Anyway, is awesome, especially since he's just spent the last few episodes just cocking up. Gordon tried to sneak into the station without being noticed, just looks so amusing to me. This is a big, bright blue, massive machine pulling coaches, and he's trying to be as subtle as possible thinking no one will notice it. It's comical. It has to be Thomas passing the windmill. There's a reason this was used as the very first shot of the opening. Special mention also goes to Elsbridge Station, because a station looking this empty isn't something we see that much. Thomas sat there looking absolutely mortified, surrounded by danger signs, while a bunch of people stand on top of him with fishing rods. It's such an amazing and weird sight. This is the first episode of the show to feature snow on the sets, but my personal favourite shot of the episode doesn't actually feature any. It's actually the very first shot of the episode that gets my pick. It's a picturesque, idyllic countryside with a pond, grass, trees, and some buildings, including a church steeple in the distance. There are no characters present here whatsoever, but it's just a beautiful shot. You could have this framed. This episode has some very nice shots of the two racers travelling through the country, but my favourite is Thomas crossing the bridge where he'd been fishing previously. I just like seeing that human there sat on their boat, doing some fishing of their own. This season doesn't have too many glimpses of people just doing their own thing in the background, completely disconnected from the railway, and I like seeing it. It makes the world feel a bit busier. When the narrator is explaining about tenders, there's a part when he specifically explains about tank engines with Thomas on screen, and he looks directly at the camera. It's like he's thinking, yeah, I know you're talking about me there, Ringo, or whichever narrator you prefer. Percy wishing Henry looks so funny. The low angle shot combined with the shot expression goes so well together. He looks... I can't describe how he looks there. I really like seeing Percy going backwards all the way up Gordon's Hill. This is a location we've seen a few times, with engines climbing it normally, and sometimes struggling. But seeing an engine that's so scared, he just zips straight up there backwards, was cool. And it helped sell just how much Percy was shitting his smoke box. The Fat Controller swapping his usual tailcoat and top hat for regular workman's clothes and then riding in Henry's cab with the crew was cool, because it showed that he wasn't just some rich guy who bosses everyone around. He actually got his hands dirty and actually got involved with how his engines ran. He was in there riding the cab, actually seeing what was wrong. This episode has so many good shots. It's the standout episode of season 1. The dock set in the early hours of the morning has all this machinery about, like cranes and lorries, and the mist really adds to the atmosphere. Henry driving past the yard as a dark silhouette, only lit up by his front lights. Henry driving through the countryside, from one side of the camera to the other, with the yellow dawn sky behind him. That shot that mirrors the first one of the sad story of Henry. Henry crossing the bridge. These are all wonderful shots that were very unique in their lighting. And I don't think this sort of thing was done again. Of course we'd have night and day shots after this, but there was none that really captured this specific time frame with the yellow sky. However, for my pick, I'm actually going to go with the crash. This was the first ever proper on-screen crash in Thomas and Friends. We did see Thomas hit the snow, but big crashes became something of a staple in Thomas, and this set a great example. Now the crash is actually a few different shots, so sticking with my own rules, I'll have to pick one, and it's this one. The first has the impact with Henry knocking the brake van flying, but he just kind of goes forward. The second one has him just careening straight over the wreckage, and you can see just how much of a mess this is. They did a really good job of showing the carnage here, with Henry just smashing through these vans across this twisted heap of metal. It looks so good. Now here's one I'd never really thought about before. Henry's sneeze is an impressive shot, because you can actually see his face change while he's moving. We've seen an engine's face change before, back in Thomas and Gordon, but that was just two shots spliced together when Thomas wakes Gordon up, and it wasn't so seamlessly done because when Gordon wakes up, there's a hard cut, and in the hard cut you can see a few things around him change positions as well, which makes it seem more obvious than it's a hard cut. But in this case it does look seamless. Henry continues driving forward smoothly while the face changes, and I do not know how they did this. What I imagine they did was drive him forward with one faceplate, stop him, swap the faceplate, and then continue driving, cutting out anything in between to make it seem smooth. It's definitely the show's best, if subtle, combination of stop motion animation with the real-time footage of the engines moving. Again, I'd never thought about this before, but it does look really good. The only other time I can really remember this would be when they were building the bricks in front of Henry in the sad story of Henry. That looked fine, but you could tell it was stop motion. It was just cutting to different shots of them building the wall. This just looked smooth. I love it. This episode has some lovely shots of Toby travelling down his line, and any one of these would be worthy of the pick. But I do have to go with the shot that has him passing the castle. It's just a piece of set dressing, yeah, but it does expand Sodor and its history a bit. All we've seen really in terms of structures is railway infrastructure and general habitation. We haven't really seen anything like this. I love castles, because they look awesome, and I like walking around them soaking all the history up, trying to imagine what they were like hundreds of years ago. It might just be me, but when I see that castle there, it gets me wondering what the in-universe history of that place is. What sort of stuff happened there? Is it haunted? I like seeing the Fat Controller having breakfast. That's it. It's nice seeing inside his home. I like this high-angle shot showing James with the wreckage around him. That displays how much of a mess the crafts made. Percy pulling up alongside him with his innocent little smile is cute, because you can just tell he's loving it. Gordon's rescue looks really good. It's really atmospheric with the night sky in the mist, and those mysterious lights of an unidentified engine going past. You don't know who it is. Though Gordon being pulled from the ditch is the main focus, seeing the engine in the background just continuing on doing their thing shows that there is other work going on. It's a railway. I also do have to mention this really unsettling shot of James though. Why is he just looking directly upwards while smiling like that as he pulls? It just looks weird to me. The shot of Thomas travelling through Knapford became iconic, as the only known moving footage of the pilot. Until the actual pilot was uploaded anyway. For years, this otherwise unassuming shot enjoyed status as an old relic of significance. I just had to point that out, because my actual favourite shot of the episode is this one, of Thomas and Gordon viewed from inside one of the mine structures. I think it's a really well composed shot, with creative framing, using different parts of the mine around the edges of the camera. I did a photography course when I was in college, and one of my favourite things to learn was framing images using my surroundings, so I can appreciate when I see it used like that. The last shot is really nice. It's sweet to see the whole main cast together on screen, which is a rare sight, except Terence and Annie or Clarabelle. I can't really tell who's missing there. I wonder what they're doing. Why couldn't they be here? Percy going through the buffers and down into the dip looks good. I really like how the camera is actually behind the buffers, and we can see Percy heading straight towards us. I can imagine this one actually being quite frightening to some viewers when they were a child, because of how close he gets to the camera here. Two big engines being brought to a standstill by a single cow. It's a really amusing shot both with and without context. The shot of Bertie up on the hill with Edward down there in the distance has a great sense of scale to it, with a good deal of verticality that we don't really see too often in the show. Usually, the sets are shown more horizontally, with the details spread out along the x-axis, but this is one of the few times things are presented with more of a sense of height. I really like the use of depth of field here. As Bertie arrives, the shot focuses on him instead. The first time we see the scrapyard, there's this long, slow panning shot that lingers on the screen for quite a while. The narration continues while the camera moves to show what they're describing, going from this grim, dusty yard full of old broken machinery, to introducing Trevor, and finally showing Edward there. Season 2 really did start moving the camera around a lot more. Season 2's first runaway scene has some fantastic shots that feel appropriate for the tense action, and it's quite hard to pick just one as my favourite. This aerial shot showing James and Edward side by side from behind is awesome, and almost feels like some sort of police chase. But I think I'd have to go with this shot where the two rush past the camera as it pans up past the bridge as they go under it, and then moves back down. This is where I should point out that I'm aware I probably sound like an absolute gimboid, enthusiastically praising shots where the camera is just moving around a bit really. Don't worry, I'm aware. The establishing shot of the harbour is interesting, showing us this large industrial area that's become a mess. This place will actually become the setting for a few episodes this season, so it's good to basically show it in its entirety here. I also like it because it's one of those long panning shots that Season 2 loves to do, and we see Thomas pulling in just over there when he's mentioned in the narration. I really like this panning shot towards Percy, Gordon and James, because it's showing off quite a wide set that contains some recognisable locations if you look closely. There's the coal hopper from Thomas and Percy and the coal, the station master's house when Thomas comes to breakfast, and the sheds they stay at. It's nice to see these locations all in one shot, as most of the time, the scenes tend to just cut between them, rather than show them all in one shot like this. It makes it seem a lot more expansive and cohesive. This shot inside the Fat Controller's office really stood out to me, because on the wall behind him, there's this photo of an engine. It's a real life photo, which clashes so hard with the established style of the show, since everything else in this universe of course looks like a model. This photo is of an LMS Jubilee class. It's easily this aerial shot showing Percy and Harold's race. Seeing Percy snaking all the way down below with Harold just in the corner is such a grand sight, and a really creative shot that shows them both at the same time. It's easily one of my favourite shots of the entire show. Duck passing by the watermill looks lovely. It's one of those types of shots where the engine is pushed further back into the background, so the location itself becomes more prominent, and this set looks really nice. The water looks really good here, and a real upgrade from how it looked back in Series 1. Ooh, it's my favourite episode of Series 2. There's a few shots in this one that I really like. The very first shot is a great one, because it shows off a lot of the harbour, which is full of boats, cranes, warehouses, a gas holder, and loads more, which is a great example of Series 2's detailed industrial sets. Having Henry in the background travelling along with the camera gives it a good sense of pace, and we even get to see Bill and Ben for the first time. This shot with the camera slowly travelling downwards past the gas holder towards Thomas has always been a personal favourite of mine too. There's nothing really special about it other than the fact that we don't usually get ones that just go downwards like this, but I've always found it nice. Especially with a busy station theme playing. Percy's plunge itself is quite a striking shot, as we see him at a red, dead-on side view, with a clear sky behind him, which contrasts well with his green, going straight into the water, showing how the crew weren't afraid to just dunk these models straight in. Finally, there's Percy's rescue, since I'm a sucker for those cool nighttime shots, and you even get a brief early glimpse of Diesel. As for my favourite, I'll go for the very first one. I like this shot where the camera pulls backwards as Diesel and Duck simultaneously drive towards it. It's almost like it's dragging them along with it. The very last shot of this episode has the camera zooming in as Duck sadly pulls away, and Diesel triumphantly backs into the shed. It's really fitting for the downer ending this episode leaves us on, with both characters moving in the same direction, but completely different outlooks. One in defeat, and the other in victory. One going forwards, and the other going backwards. Duck rushing past the camera here is an iconic shot. As I said earlier, I love castles, so seeing another one here is always nice. And I love the way it's framed, with Duck pelting from one side of the shot to the other, with the trucks right behind him. It's a fantastic way of portraying how intense this chase really is. I really like the low-angle shot looking up at the viaduct as Henry passes over it, pulling the coaches. We've seen this viaduct a few times throughout the season, and it's interesting to see it change significantly, with all the scaffolding and repair equipment on it. The low angle makes it seem a lot bigger and more imposing, and it makes me think it would be pretty cool to be down here by yourself, looking up at this thing, watching trains go by, from this sort of exact angle. The spiteful brake van's broken remains being removed is an intriguing and actually quite grisly sight. Not only does the van's face have a black eye, but it's also, like, just a face? Its front end with the face on it is completely separated from the rest of the body, which is just really messed up because this character has basically been decapitated. Is it still alive? Is that an expression frozen at the moment of the van's death? Who knows? It's the shot of the castle again from a close shave, but I think it looks really pretty in the snow. This would be a really nice wallpaper. It's got to be the sight of Thomas having broken through the wall of the building, with the family sat there just staring at him. An engine smashing into your house is obviously a scary thing, but now imagine an engine with a face doing it, and just staring at you with those eyes. Those big, round, white balls, just staring into your soul. Ugh. Seeing Percy and Toby side by side looking half dead, while Daisy is just sat there next to them looking bright and energetic is just such a vibe. It's one of those pictures that you could just show somebody with no context and they'd be like, yeah, I get it. My favourite shot here is the very last one. I do tend to really like those types of shots where it's zoomed out a bit and you just see the trains going past doing their things. The scenery looking nice is a plus too. Boko's reveal is easily the best shot here. I love the way it slowly pulls back as Bill approaches Boko. There's a real tension as the camera pans alongside a long line of trucks, then a long green Diesel's body, and finally we see Boko's face, and he does not look very happy. Given how the episode had built up to a Diesel going around the yard apparently stealing trucks with magic, this shot worked really well for keeping that tension going just a little bit longer before we meet the culprit. The long panning shot that goes all the way down the platform is really nice. The platform is very busy, jam-packed with people, and I think this might actually have the largest amount of human characters on screen at once in the whole show. I'm not going to count them all, so let's just assume I'm right. It's nighttime outside, so the only lighting is coming from these lamps, and coupled with the steam coming from the engines, it gives the station this hazy, almost seedy vibe. It's the sort of atmosphere you might see in some illicit backroom poker game or something like that. It's unique. Unfortunately, when the camera stops the show in the engines, Edward has no eyebrows.
Oh my god. Oh!
Yeah, it's a terrible thing.
Oh!
It's a terrible thing for you to see that.
The nighttime shots in this episode are also very good. I really like this shot of Bill and Ben at the quarry. It's framed really well with the two engines down below, with the quarry wall towering over them, and then the skybox. I think the colours and tones in this shot are quite striking too. It would have been the money shot of the episode where Edward has to stop because he's broken in the pouring down rain. But, perhaps controversially, I've never really been a big fan of this episode because the model work doesn't really do the best job at selling the situation. If it had, well, that would most likely have been the best shot of the episode. I've probably made it obvious by now that I love night shots in this show, and Ghost Train is full of them. This was the first spooky episode of the show, and it would become something of a tradition as it went along, with the production crew going out of their way to make the sets look as eerie as possible. As the first one, Ghost Train immediately sets the standard, with sets full of thick, rolling mist, and minimal lighting illuminating things in the darkness. My personal pick is this one of Tidmouth Yard. It looks so eerie here, just blanketed in fog. The rows of arranged wagons almost look grave-like, and those cranes over there, they look like monsters or something. It's this one here, if only because of the unique sight of an engine seeing itself in a mirror. Thomas being pulled from the snowdrift is such a funny looking shot. He's pulled free by the twins, and he's just got this big clump of snow covering his face. There's a beat, then the snow is just blown away to reveal an expression of pure annoyance. He's not scared or frightened of being buried alive and frozen. He's just pissed off at being stuck there. Season 3 onwards has a whole new visual style, and with that comes plenty of new shots. Percy travelling down the canal here just looks lovely. The skybox behind him actually looks quite realistic, more like the sort of one you'd actually see with snow. Percy going past the coastal village looks good. I like the way it's framed, and this set reminds me of Fishguard, which is one of my favourite places in Wales. The way the Fat Controller looks here did amuse me. Look at the way his hat is placed there, sort of dangling on the side. Totally undignified. This angle of Gordon, where we see his wheels working as he thunders past, is really good. I said earlier that I do like shots where the faces aren't visible, and this one goes even further, showcasing some of the machinery that makes this big guy work. I'd love to see more shots like this, honestly. This episode and season are full of lovely coastal shots, and this one of Duck travelling past way out in the background is my favourite. This feels like an illustration, with the production artist adding plenty of character to the scene, with objects such as the boat in the foreground with the seagulls resting on it. It feels like a proper snapshot in time. Thomas going past the field with the animals grazing is a nice shot. It's a great example of Season 3's more vibrant colours, which really pop out at you from the screen. Personally, I've never liked Season 3's visual style as much as Season 1 or 2, but I won't call it bad, it's still awesome. The scenery is still beautiful, and this particular shot is just a nice look at the countryside life. I like this shot of Thomas next to the ocean liner, which absolutely dwarfs him. I think it's the SS Vienna prop brought back from Tugs, and it's good to see it again. The close-up of the Fat Controller reprimanding Diesel really stood out to me. He looks so severe here. What is up with his eyes? He looks possessed.
I'm evil. I'm evil.
The first shot of Henry seeing the forest after the storm is my favourite here. I really like the high angle shot looking down at Henry, showing all the devastation. Gordon being washed down by a Hool crew shows that these jobs, especially on bigger engines, really do take a lot of work, with many hands involved, and it's cool to see so many human characters working at once. I also really like the stormy backdrop this episode has. It's only briefly seen in a montage of James working at the docks, but I really like this shot. Series 3's more vibrant colours really work well here, with James's red standing out amongst the cooler tones of everything else in the background. And I love the way the water is positioned with a perfect reflection of everything, making for a shot that's almost perfectly mirrored from top to bottom. Thomas and Percy passing each other in the fog is my absolute favourite shot here. I love how atmospheric it looks with the dim lighting, and it's great how it's timed, so that you see Percy at first with only an approaching light in the distance to indicate another engine, and just as Percy disappears into the fog, Thomas emerges from the fog. One goes in as another one comes out. I love the Series 1 backgrounds. So this episode opening up with stock footage from back then was a real treat. Seeing Thomas travelling down what was Toby's old line is easily my favourite shot of the episode. I mean, just look at that. Look at that. Series 1 goodness. The camera travelling down the line in this shot stood out to me, because it's filmed a bit like a POV, but it isn't actually. and Toby looks really ominous there at the end at the top. The titular tightrope scene contains the best shot here. Toby was the only main character who really had yet to have an accident, and his first one here looked very dangerous indeed. The rapidly rushing water beneath those skeletal rails really sells how perilous this is. Seeing all three of the show's main road-based characters on screen at the same time was nice. It has to be the shot of James getting stung. This episode was the first one to notably combine the usual live-action footage with cartoon cell animation, and this sequence really stands out. There is another shot where we actually see more of the bee going around, but my favourite is this one because the close-up of James's face with the bee buzzing around. Of course, it's the final shot of the episode. There's a reason this was a favourite of members of the crew. The three engines side by side watching the sunset, silhouetted against the brilliant backdrop, is just iconic. Easily one of the contenders for the best shot of the whole show. It's gotta be this shot of Bill and Ben passing each other here. Just look at this. Just look at this. I love how zoomed out it is, so the engines in the background have an equal amount of presence, and is set up in a way so that the industrial part is on the left, and then the natural part is on the right, with that lovely skybox behind them. Shots like this are just wonderful. The scene when Henry goes past with his dirty, smelly old tenders has this nice shot that's quite low down, with Gordon and James on either side of the frame, as well as the other engines in the background watching Henry's embarrassment. Everyone's turned out to see this. It might surprise you to hear that my favourite shot of the episode is not one of the nighttime ones at the ad where Oliver is. There are indeed some very nice ones during that part, but my actual favourite is this one right here, of Douglas pulling Oliver and Toad past this beautiful dawn skybox. Season 3 may not have had as many dynamic or interesting camera movements as Season 2 did, but shots like this do stand out. This shot of Duck and Oliver passing each other looks great. I absolutely love that decorated tunnel entrance that looks like a castle. I think it's based on the Clayton Tunnel. I also like the way the water reflects the top half of the screen onto the bottom, like a no joke for James. I like this shot of the now wrecked Bulgy in the field with Duck and Bertie going past. There's not much to be said, but I like the colours in it. During the rock slide scene, there's this shot where the debris falls with such force that it makes the set itself shake. It's the sort of devastation you'd see in an episode of Tugs, and I like to think that David Mitton really enjoyed doing this one. The shot where Percy gets covered in fruit amused me, because it looks like he's just getting squirted in the face with fairy liquid. If you're not from the UK, then it's just washing up liquid. Maybe you call it something different over there where you live. Unfortunately, the fruit reminded me of sick. Gross. The very first shot of the episode has Thomas travelling across this track past the mountain, and it just looks glorious, with all the greenery and flowing waterfalls. Season 4 has a good chunk of episodes set on the narrow gauge railways, with many shots of beautiful scenery and a wilder, untamed part of the island, with big looming mountains and thick woodland, in contrast with the more industrialised and urban environments of what came previously. Many episodes also have this sort of yellowish tint to them that gives them a warm, comfy atmosphere. Let's start with Grandpuff. My personal favourite episode here is the shot with the time-lapse that shows Duke's shed being gradually buried by the scenery as time passes. Quite a melancholic sight that shows how nature eventually reclaims the landscape. I like this shot right here because it feels like there's so much going on, with the guy having just fallen right through the roof onto Duke, exposing the shed for sunlight for the first time in who knows how many years, illuminating Duke inside, who's just covered in cobwebs and debris. The way it's all right in the middle of the shot like this makes me think that this would work quite nicely as a poster. Falcon going over the edge is the money shot here, with the low camera angle selling just how up they are and the danger they were in. This really zoomed out shot of Stuart and Duke going past the mountain is wild, because it really makes the set seem massive, and of course shows that this part of the island is wilder and more mountainous. I just want to know, how tall was this set? I would love to see the behind the scenes of this episode. This episode opens up with some really nice shots showing the scenery of the narrow gauge railway, and my favourite shot is this first one here. There's some classic filmmaking goodness here, with that lake in the background actually being just a painting, placed just next to the set, to make this location seem much more expansive. Until making this video, I'd never really even considered things like this. It's this shot of Rheneas crossing the bridge in town at night. It's zoomed out and very dark here, with the only illumination coming from the various lights around the place, and it's just oozing atmosphere. This shot right here is interesting. I don't know how this happened, but Henry with Gordon's face is certainly a memorable sight. Face swaps like this are quite a rare instance in this show, and whenever it happens, you cannot unsee it. Rusty and Harold greeting each other at the end is a great looking shot, with both characters present. There's a good sense of skill, with the zoomed out camera showing just how small Rusty looks next to the mountain, and the warm evening colours makes it seem really cosy. Skarloey crossing the bridge over the stream just looks really pleasant. I like the way the flowing water is right by the camera here, while he passes in the background. It's just one of those shots that's just nice to look at, really. This shot of Skarloey crossing the viaduct reminds me a lot of the sort of shots you'd see in the first two series. Have you noticed yet that I tend to really like shots like this? This episode has some truly wondrous scenic shots of the narrow gauge railway. Up until this episode, we'd only really seen much of this location in nicer weather, but here we get to see it in the cold, muddy, and foggy grip of the wintry months. My personal favourite shot comes during the scene of Rusty travelling along this route through the woodland, with a high angle shot looking down at him. I love the Skarloey Railway, and this weather is so fitting for it, especially since it's inspired by the Talyllyn Railway in Wales. As a Welsh person myself, I don't know if you noticed that already, let me tell you, it rains a lot here, so weather like this in a place like this fits really well. It's this shot here of all the narrow gauge engines together at once. It's just nice seeing them all gathered together like this, while the bigger engines just continue doing the usual stuff in the background. Duncan passing the castle by the lake has it all. I've already established that I love castle sets, and there's more water here to mirror the top and bottom half of the shot. With the towering mountains in the background, this is a very striking shot, and honestly a contender from one of my favourites of them all. My favourite shot in this episode is more or less the same as the episode before, with Rhaenyra passing by the castle by the lake, except this time it's covered in a thick mist, and much colder looking. If you look closely, you can even see the raindrops making the water ripple, which is something I never noticed before. I'm torn between two particular shots in this episode. I think this one of the engines travelling over the bridge past the buildings on the moonlit night looks absolutely gorgeous. The rickety Victorian rooftops, the chimney stack, the huge moon behind them. This right here is what I'm talking about when I praise this production work. But I also really like the very first shot of Stepney, as it's framed in a way where he's surrounded on all sides by scrapped engines. A brilliant visual representation of the fate that may await him here. The scrap right in front of the camera there really helps to sell the claustrophobic atmosphere here. He is truly boxed in. Picking my favourite here is hard because it's between something that simply looks spectacular and something that's thematically very appropriate and well shot. I think I'll have to give it to the latter though, because I've already got a lot of "this looks really nice" picks on this list, and I want to showcase more of the interesting, unique ones, so I'll go with the one of Stepney. I like this shot of Stepney and Duck driving towards the camera because of just how small Stepney looks compared to Duck. Duck's never really portrayed as one of the big engines, but even he makes Stepney look tiny.
Cranky and the big engines were trapped at the docks.
This shot of Stepney pulling up next to the cricket field is interesting to me, because of the continuity with the previous series. What do I mean by this? Look right there. You can still see Bulgy there, who's been sat there since Series 3. They could have easily set this scene anywhere, on some nondescript field, but they chose to have it here for some nice continuity. I love this shot of the station because of how busy it looks. You've got the bridge right in the foreground with the kids watching, Bertie driving past, the workman down by the car, James and Stepney going down the line, and Gordon waiting in the background. It's another snapshot of a scene that's only on screen for a few seconds, but there's plenty going on. This shot here is so simple, but I find it so amusing. Henry drives into the tunnel and disappears into its blackness, and remains there for a beat, and then reverses straight back out. I think it's just the fact that all of this happens in one continuous shot just makes it really comedic to me. The very first shot of the episode has Oliver returning from the works, and, as was the case with the earlier shot of Stepney, I like it because of how well I feel it works thematically. Oliver's story on Sodor is intrinsically tied to Scrap, since it's the whole reason he ended up here in the first place. And this shot has him triumphantly returning from the works following his accident, passing the sad, twisted remains of scrapped engines on his way. It's an ever-present reminder of the fate he was escaping from, even during this glorious moment of him getting yet another lease on life. I also like how one of the scrapped engines is just the Thomas model. This shot of Daisy's confrontation with Champion is good because it reinforces just how much of a roadblock the Bull seems to be to this big machine, and having him in the foreground with his back to the camera makes him come across as the defiant protagonist of the story, and not the engine that we're actually meant to be following. It's definitely this rotating bird's eye view of all the engines lined up in a circle. We've never had a straight top-down view like this before that I can remember, so it's always interesting to see a new sight like this. The way they're arranged like that reminds me of the shape of a wheel, with the engines as the spokes. Quite fitting considering that it's wheel these engines run on, and since this is the 100th episode, it's almost like a commemorative trophy for the engines. What better to symbolise and celebrate these engines than the very wheels they run on? Am I looking into this too deeply? Probably. Back past the beach at sunset, it reminds me a lot of Series 3, since that was full of coastal stuff. It has to be this shot of Henry leaving the docks with the flying kipper. The low angle shot, combined with the size contrast between Henry and his surroundings, gives the impression of this truly being a large, powerful machine, and not just a model on a set. The lens flare-esque illumination from the lamps, shining brilliantly through the large cloud of steam emanating from Henry, sets the mood well. And the camera remaining in place as Henry slowly moves past with the kipper in tow, his machinery spinning around as he does so, is just the icing on the cake. This shot is fantastic. Percy pushing the trucks over the harbour onto Bulstrode is a good action shot, featuring some good truck-on-barge carnage. But I also like how it's very angular. I may be going off the deep end here, but while watching I noticed that a lot of the props in the shot are aligned along very well-defined planes. The harbour wall being so prominent in the shot gives us a good reference point of where everything is positioned, and the majority of the props being formed by straight lines just works really nicely with it. Again, I probably sound like I'm going off the deep end and a bit insane here, so I tried to illustrate it a bit what I meant. All those straight lines and angles, just something about it just clicks with my brain. I don't know why.
My head is turning to soup!
I adore this long panning shot as Tom Tipper drives through this town at the water's edge. The camera remains here for so long, and we get to see this whole set, including buildings, people, boats, and of course those water reflections I really enjoy. There's not a train or railway in sight, just a lovely view of a car travelling through some scenery. Series 5 really cranks up the action with a lot more accidents and drama. Not only that, but the show has had somewhat of a visual tweak too, with the more saturated colours and a higher contrast that really makes the shadows pop. Let's see what sort of shots await us here. The standout scene of the first episode is of course the storm, where the old tramp steamer crashes into the shed, burying the engines and knocking Cranky over. There's a lot of lightning flashing, and the ship ploughing through the wood and smacking into the shed makes for a very action-packed scene. That's already established, Series 5 is going to be a bit of a different ballgame. My personal favourite shot is this one with the engines in the foreground watching the ship approaching, the wood smashing in its wake. My favourite shot of this episode is this one, because of a blink and you'll miss a cameo of Donald. He only appears twice in this whole series, in a very small, non-speaking role. Douglas doesn't even appear at all. The first time Gordon goes to the new station, there's this shot of the camera travelling backwards as Gordon travels forward, with the scenery rushing past him. Now, I have no idea how they filmed this. Was the camera attached to his model, or another model in front of him? Is it just going backwards in perfect sync with the model's movement? Is it just Gordon's model being held in place while the footage plays behind him? I don't know. Either way, this looks really smooth and really good. The Fat Controller's journey on George has some hilarious shots. My personal favourite being him just falling straight off. Just look at him go. The shot of him getting splat in the face always gets me too. Though the tree scene does have some cool shots, it's actually the opening scene with Thomas and the courtyard that is my favourite shot of the episode. I'm a fan of any scenes with any sort of rainy or misty weather, especially the overcast skies here, and I love how dirty and wet Thomas looks here. I really like how they made Thomas look, covering him in coal dust and water from the rain, showing the horrible conditions he's working in. I like seeing the grimy mining equipment in the background too, it reminds me of Series 2. Similar to that really good shot of Henry and Fish, the camera here makes Gordon look huge, compared to the workman next to him. The shot where Gordon hits the truck is amazing. Look at the way that thing just rockets straight upwards out of the frame in an instant. Incredible. This episode gave us this shot of Percy yawning. That is all. The first person POV of the trucks plunging into the mine shaft is my favourite shot here. I've always really liked how expansive and cavernous it makes these shafts seem, giving a really good sense of how far into the mines these things are going before they crash and get buried within. The shot of the dam breaking is spectacular, the stone bricks exploding outwards as the water bursts through, spilling everywhere, to reveal a very fragile, skeletal track. It shows that Toby's hopes here are thin. Like Ghost Train back in Series 2, this episode is full of dark, eerie sets, covered in mist and fog. My favourite shot here is this one of the mysterious figure watching Henry and the trucks go by. I love the way the human model is silhouetted against the window glow of the old station in the middle of the shot, with Henry and the trucks passing in the background. Actually quite missable if you're not even looking properly. This is something I'm adding at the very last minute, but while I was editing this, I noticed something strange. On the very frame where it goes from the shot of Old Bailey in the station to this next shot showing the track, I don't know if I'm going crazy here, but for a split second, it looks like I can see the face of a truck on the screen. Now, I've tried slowing the footage down and going between them, and even when I do it frame by frame, it seems that this truck on the screen flashes for the briefest of seconds, and I can't do it reliably. I don't know if I'm going crazy here, so I'm going to try and record my screen and show what I'm seeing. I cannot get this to stay on the screen, even when I lower the footage down to 1%. I don't know if I'm going crazy here, but honestly, this is spooky. Please let me know if you see the truck on your screen really briefly. I'm talking like for a fraction of a second. I don't know what's going on here. I may be going crazy, but I noticed this and I had to put this in here.
I just have to say, this is weird.
I like the final shot where it slowly zooms out and we see Boko, Bill, Ben and Duck alongside each other. It's just nice seeing Boko around since he's not here a lot. Some really good dynamic shots in this episode that really sell how horrible Stepney's situation is. But it's this final one that really caught my attention. Not only is it simply striking visually with all the shadows and almost demonic red glow, but thematically it's also very appropriate. Stepney is safe for now, but the rusted remains of scrapped engines are still very visible down below him as he passes over that skeletal bridge. A constant reminder of what could have happened to him. The red glow almost seems like an eye watching him leave, gazing at him with malicious intent, with the graveyard of its victims displayed before it. I'm aware this same shot was in Put Upon Percy earlier in the series, but it's way more fitting here, and I think it's funny that Percy was also in this awful place, but was probably so busy and fed up that he didn't even care. As Toby travels down the old overgrown line, there's this one shot I really like. Look how wild and bushy this place looks, with foliage everywhere. Toby looks so small and overwhelmed here, absolutely shrouded by shrubbery. And the leaves around the frame arranged in that way makes it seem like we're peeking in through a little gap in the overgrowth. A few shots in this episode that I noticed. Only one of them of course is my favourite, but I wanted to point out these other ones. First, did you know that these are real fish that fall on Thomas? That's gross. Those poor models. Given how they're scaled here with Thomas, how big are these things? If we take the dimensions of an LBS E2 and divide them by the average size of a saltwater fish, we have to consider what sort of things they're putting in the water in Sodor that could be making them this big. I think the Samba Farmer is actually a serial killer working with Mrs. Kindly, using carrots as a murder weapon. Is actually not and really the question is the Fat Controller's wife having an affair? Electric? And in conclusion, these are just big fish. After Henry's dip in the water, there's a seagull sitting on top of his funnel. And later on he's back on the rails, that seagull is still there. I like to think that this was just really comfortable. I never noticed this before. As for my favourite shot of the episode, it's this one right here, of Henry reaching the coastal track. I probably sound like a broken record by now, but I really do like the shots that involve darkness, low lighting, and any sort of mist or fog, and this is just another one of those. It could almost be mistaken for a still from Tugs. This shot of Percy and Thomas in the scrapyard caught me off guard, because I usually associate this place, and scrap in general, with being quite harsh and gloomy. But here they're just casually driving through it in nice, clear, sunny weather. This is basically a graveyard with the bodies of engines left out in the open. I guess it shows the difference that atmosphere can make. Imagine how this would look at night, for example. I also really like how the big Mickey model in the way back gives a nice sense of scale. It's this shot right here, just because I find James's tired face downright hilarious looking. I like this aerial shot looking down as the Fat Controller is searching for Oliver. It's like we're seeing down from Harold's POV. And since we don't get as many shots like this, I'll give it a shout out. I like the way this shot right here is framed, with Percy travelling straight down the middle. There's just something satisfying about it. I also have to mention this shot here though. Is that Bulstrode? Where's his face? Is he dead? So, while watching this episode, I noticed that my pick for Oliver's find was just the shortened version of the aerial shot in this episode. I'm not going to go back and change that one, so let's just say this one is my favourite too. This shot, when the trucks whiz past the crossing and it just cuts straight to Bertie's silent reaction, is hilarious. He's not saying anything, but you can just imagine in his head he's just like, "What?" Surprise, it's another aerial shot. I guess this season does have a few. This one, going past the coastal town with Donald parked there, looks nice. and it looks like a nice place to go on holiday, like Fishguard or Tenby. It's also one of 2 times we very briefly see Donald in this series. Remember back in Whistles and Sneezes where I praised that really smooth shot of Henry closing his eyes? Well, it happens again in this one too, and it looks even better here. Again, I don't know how they did it, but it looks awesome. This is my personal favourite episode of the whole show, and it's got some amazingly haunting shots. My favourite here is right at the beginning of Rusty's story, with the little engine travelling across the bridge. This looks so eerie and atmospheric, with the mist flowing upwards from the bottom like wispy fingers, and the moon right in the back illuminating just a small portion of the bridge. I love the way it's framed from a side-on view, with the little engine emerging from one side, an angle that we've seen a few times in the show that usually involves the character reaching one side of the screen to the other, except this time it doesn't. Before it can finish its journey, the engine falls off straight to the bottom. Before it can even go fully past the moon, it plunges into the depths. It's there in the light, bathing in the glowing beams of hope for the briefest of moments, before it loses its life. I also think it's interesting how you can just barely see that this engine has a face, so you know it's alive, but not close enough to actually make out any details. The final shot of the episode has Boulder high up on its mountain top, looking forlorn into the distance, with Rusty down there looking quite small in comparison. These were the 2 main characters of the episode, so ending with the both in frame works. The camera slowly zooms in until we just see Boulder in the frame, leaving the episode on quite a mysterious and wistful sight. Finally, we get to snow. I love the shot where the snow and all the trucks just get dumped on Skarloey. He actually gets covered in an earlier shot, but I prefer this one because of how much crap falls on him. Not only a big pile of snow, but the silly trucks riding the avalanche down as well. Poor guy. So that's it. My favourite shot from every episode of the classic series. You may be wondering why I won't do series 6 and 7, and probably rightfully so. I don't really consider them to be part of the classics, as they came out after the Magic Railroad, with a look and feel to them that just feels a bit off to me. The classics are everything before the film in my opinion. I could go into this more, but now's not the place. Feel free to disagree, but that's just how I see it. Anyway, this has been an interesting video to make, and it's given me a new appreciation for an aspect of the show I'd never really paid much attention to before. Like I said at the beginning, there were quite a few different reasons why I picked the ones I did. Some I elaborated on a lot more than others when I felt that I had a lot more to talk about. If you enjoyed this, then please let me know, and also let me know if you absolutely hated it, or however you felt, I don't mind. Thank you for watching.